everybody, and welcome to the Earflaps podcast where we tear apart the movies we love for educational purposes. I'm Annie Pulling, and with me here today is Max.
Hello.
And Lizzie.
Hi.
And Rachel.
Hello.
And over in the corner is our tech support, Josiah.
Yo. He's not tech support, he is tech. He's all of the tech. So today's movie is Kubo and the Two Strings. It came out in 2016. Starring the voices of Charlize Theron, Matthew McConaughey, Ralph Fiennes, Art Parkinson. There's a long list on this one. George Takei, Rooney Mara, and a bunch of other people that someone else knows.
That have minor roles.
Yeah. Like, those are the main people, and then there's a lot of, like, background characters that are in there.
That's quite the star-studded cast.
Yeah.
So Kubo and the Two Strings is rated PG. His aunts have like porcelain faces and they have creepy voices, and there's a lot of sword fighting and just some epic action and some epic like monster characters. So if that's something that your younger children are not comfortable with, then maybe this one isn't for you.
So I think kind of our general impression after watching this was, are we actually going to have anything to say? We don't know.
Anything to deconstruct it, because
it's really good.
Yeah.
For this particular episode, we wanted to focus on deconstructing plot and kind of some of the formula that is part of, I don't know what you call it, but a quest-based plot especially. And we're going to be using a formula / theory that has been around for a long time. It's called the hero's journey, which was first kind of introduced to the world at large in 1949 by Joseph Campbell in a book called Hero with a Thousand Faces. And the hero's journey is basically taking the most common stories from mythology and stories that were being written all throughout history and kind of taking all of the common plot elements between them and creating this formula with it. So the hero's journey is very specific, actually. It's a 17-stage process that a quest-based film or story or any story. It fits particularly to quest-based stories, but it actually can fit to any story.
Yeah.
So in one sense, it's very broad in general in what it talks about, but it's also very specific in these points that you're supposed to hit at different times. So we're going to be talking a lot about that because Kubo and the Two Strings is such a quest-based storyline. It like fits the hero's journey almost to a T. So it makes it really easy to talk about this. So I guess before we started, I just wanted to go over a little bit of the hero's journey and the terminology. So it's kind of, these 17 stages are split up into 3 different sections, which conveniently, not really, correspond to, the 3-act structure, the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story. So I was just going to read the first act, the points that are in the first act, and kind of go through them real quick before we start, so that we will be able to recognize them as they happen here at the beginning of the movie. So the first act is called The Departure, and it has 5 of the 17 points, and they are the call to adventure, the refusal of the call, supernatural aid, number 4 is crossing the threshold, and number 5 is the belly of the whale. The call to adventure is the hero begins in a situation of normality, their normal life, from which some information is received that acts as a call to head off into the unknown. This is their call. And then typically, often when the call is given, the future hero first refuses to heed it. This may be from a sense of duty or obligation, fear, insecurity, a sense of inadequacy, or any range of reasons that work to hold the person in his or her current circumstances.
So basically, I don't wanna for some reason.
Or I want to, but I don't feel like I can't. Or I want to, but I need to stay here for whatever reason. Stage 3 is supernatural aid, which is once the hero has committed to the quest, consciously or unconsciously, his guide and magical helper appears or becomes known. More often than not, the supernatural mentor will present the hero with one or more talismans or artifacts that will aid him later in his quest. We'll get to that in this movie. Stage 4, crossing the first threshold. This is the point where the person actually crosses into the field of adventure, leaving the known limits of his or her world and venturing into an unknown and dangerous realm where the rules and limits are not known. And then stage 5, which is the last one in Act 1, is the belly of the whale. The belly of the whale represents the final separation from the hero's known world and self. By entering this stage, the person shows willingness to undergo a metamorphosis. When first entering the stage, the hero may encounter a minor danger or setback. So kind of the idea of the hero's journey is that the hero will go through all these different stages, and they will come out at the end changed or having grown from their experience.
They'll have gone through metamorphosis.
Yeah. So the other 2 acts, the first act is the departure, and those first 5 points. The second act is initiation, and the third act is return. So it's actually part of the hero's journey that they come back to where they were, but that they're a changed person because of this journey.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, kind of long explanation. We're going to start the movie.
So we got the movie queued up. We're right at the part where the Universal intro has just faded on, and we're just seeing a bunch of stars. And 3, 2, 1, play.
I'm so taken with this intro. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like capturing the whole world in your movie.
Wrong one.
Were you doing the Fox one?
So something we were talking about before we started recording was the title and how we were kind of mixed on the title, because we referred to it just kind of as Kubo, but the actual title is Kubo and the Two Strings. But you were saying, Max, that that's not the title everywhere.
Yeah, it's like some places it was just marketed as Kubo. Like in the trailers when they have the voiceover, it was just called Kubo.
Mm-hmm. I really like the what's it called? The voiceover intro.
If you must blink, do it now.
Yeah. It's really catching.
I wonder if that's stop motion or.
And just like the whole look of this opening scene of the moon in the water is just like so pretty and so
epic.
Epic.
That's what it
cool.
is. It's so epic.
I like how it looks cold, and she looks like she's freezing.
You know, my brain just kind of fries at the thought that, you know, all of the little movements of her hair and her clothes were hand animated frame by frame, you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, this
And
opening.
it's insane.
When this movie, like when you watch the opening, I was like, this is stop motion?
So just the boat and the character is stop motion. Everything else is CGI. They couldn't do the water.
Right.
Like
and the
they
glowy
wanted,
effects are CGI.
and all the energy effects. But yeah.
They did a really good job of introducing the magic, I think, in this first scene. That is just like, oh, and here, magic is in this world, and you do it with guitars, I guess. Oh, and the voiceover with the impending wave also goes together really well.
And here's when you really feel the music as well. The music is really good in this piece.
Bonk.
Yeah.
That looked actually painful.
When I first saw that, I was like, oh.
You can really do that well with stop motion. Because, well, and
You
the
can
animation.
hurt your actors.
Yeah.
Okay, so this here, I was reading the behind the scenes where she's crawling toward Kubo and she puts her hand in the sand. There's little bits of sand that get thrown up from her hand.
Whoa.
Each one of those had to be animated individually.
I was wondering about that because I don't think I realized that it was stop motion. Like, I kind of knew that in the back of my brain. But that moment was right when I realized that, oh my goodness, this is stop motion. This is incredible.
The technology with 3D printing and doing all that and some visual effects, like it's come so far since like Wallace and Gromit and Davy and Goliath.
Chicken Run.
Yeah, because now they can they have each mouth movement is 3D printed, and then they just erase the seam in visual effects. Yep, there we go. Introducing Monkey.
Yeah, like all the introductions of this movie are really solid, and just like here, pay attention to this.
I really liked this intro. It just really got Kubo's character right off. It's such a great way to see him. You just kind of see a normal day for him.
Right.
Which is the first step in the monomyth or the hero's journey.
Yeah, the first part of the first...
normal life. You have to see the character's normal life.
Before they get called to adventure.
And then I think it's... I'm not sure what I think about them skipping so much time and not showing anything of how they got here. Like, how he learned how to play and how he...
I didn't feel like it was important to the story. I was confused.
It wasn't.
When I first watched it, I did wonder about that at this point, or right when it starts introducing his mom and that she's kind of not all there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that she hadn't been like that the whole time. So that she's getting worse and worse and worse. So you don't really know that till later. But so she obviously taught him and was there for him because he's, okay, he survived as an infant. But
right.
It took a while to get to that point.
And does it ever explain, or did you understand why she wakes up when the sun goes down?
I think it's just
because
sometimes.
I thought it was because she actually, she's the daughter of the Moon King.
Oh,
she
right.
actually belongs in the night.
Okay.
That is who she is.
Yeah, that does.
What do you guys think of the origami stuff?
It was like he folded the paper 3 times and then suddenly there's a thing.
Knowing how much work goes into actual origami, it's a little bit like, we're just glossing it over.
Yeah. But they do hang a lantern on it later on when Beetle says, "Is that really origami?" I feel like some scissors were involved.
That was funny. But
I laughed really hard at that.
I really like the lighting in this movie.
That too.
That they did
the colors are very rich.
Yeah, and they did a really good job of you can definitely tell that this is morning light, and earlier you could definitely tell it was moonlight, and so the lighting is just super great.
And they have those little tufts of breezes, his hair floats in the wind, and it makes it feel much more lifelike.
Yeah. I think the first time I watched this, I was confused, though, because I thought they lived there all by themselves. I thought they were, on a deserted island.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing is a village. And I was like, oh, wait. Okay, so I guess there's people. I think this is such a really great setup because most of it's without dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
And like you were saying, I think it actually works because they are skipping stuff. Yeah. You're not getting Kubo asking his mom, when are you gonna, wake up, and are you gonna be okay? You don't get that till later.
Pretty sad.
And you don't get his backstory with his dad until later, when it's already been introduced as this cool story. He's
not hearing it for the first time, but we are.
Yeah, and whereas in other films, I feel like you would just get a big chunk of exposition. Yeah. Or he comes up to the old lady here in the village and they have a dialogue where it's basically just exposition. I feel like you would see that often, but you don't in this movie. This is a really great example of showing and not telling.
Basket weaving in stop motion looks even more tedious.
Yeah.
I didn't quite like this old lady. She seemed more cartoonish than a lot of other things.
That's what I felt about the whole movie. I was like, a lot of this feels so different than what I'm used to in animated films. Mm-hmm. And then there will be peaks of whoa, that feels like a Disney character.
Right.
Whoa,
this one feels like a
DreamWorks
moment. Kind of character.
Yeah.
It feels like kind of she's exaggerated in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
I really like Kubo's hair, how they did his hair. You can totally tell that his hair grew really long and he just, really roughly cut it so he could see with his one eye, just, by the way it's made.
I like how the dragon.
I like that, yeah.
That dragon looks over.
I like how they already paid off the "if you must blink, do it now" thing. You're like, oh, so he says that on the regular. Like that's
It's his
that's
Once Upon a Time.
yeah,
kind of
that's
thing.
his trademark intro to draw a crowd.
In terms of structure, we're still like at the beginning of the first stage, the call to adventure. We're still at the beginning of that. Of this is the person in their normal life, what they normally do. But at the same time, they do it so well because we're getting all of this information that's going to be pertinent later. You know, he's telling this story that is really fun, and it's just right now it's just a story. But we find out later this is his backstory.
Yeah, that's what I really liked about this movie.
But at the same time, they're setting up his everyday life. They're doing double duty, and it's done so seamlessly and so well.
And they're also setting up his character that he's, you know,
They're also setting up his quest.
Yeah, setting up his quest and everything. It's like the sequence, like.
Can we call them plot coupons, please?
I
love that term. It's hilarious.
And they're also setting up that he uses magic or something, you know, because previously we haven't seen him do any of this.
Yeah.
I don't mind that it's unexplained how the magic works. You know,
I minded a little tiny bit. I was confused in this scene if it was actually happening because it's animated and it's cartoonish. I was like, so is he actually making the paper fly around, or is it just illustrating his story? I wasn't quite sure.
And you see, he has a flair for the dramatic. You know, you see that he's a kid. And,
well, he's a storyteller.
Yeah, and I just love the sequence, and the music is amazing.
I did think this sequence was a little odd. It just, the back and forth between the montage, not montage, was a little odd.
And apparently this whole thing took all day, which they showed by the sunlight moving right there. But, like...
Who would stand there
like, how
all
often
day?
does he come to the town? Does he do this every day?
Oh, the chicken. This is at this point that I was like, what the heck?
Well, yeah.
No, lady's like, kill the chicken, rip it to pieces.
I feel like she has backstory with the fire-breathing chicken.
I'm glad that they didn't bring the chicken back. Like,
Yeah.
you didn't need a fire-breathing chicken on the
I'm glad
quest.
that the Moon King wasn't a fire-breathing chicken.
What? I was just like, what the heck? With the
Chicken
eggs.
is squirting eggs out. That's
I feel like this movie is such an odd mix between your average Disney movie about the epic quest and the hero, but Japanese culture and just all of these different ideas. And it's so refreshing. Like, it's comforting at the same time. It's comfortable that it's this story that you're very familiar with. Well, it's the hero's journey that you're familiar with because every single story kind of follows along these stages. But it's really comfortable to like just get into the groove of this movie. But it's also so refreshing. That's what I really liked about it. The Moon King.
And I like the setup of the not being out, you know, past nightfall.
Oh, there's the helmet. I did not
Right.
pick that up. When
When
he came back, I was like, where did that come from?
Yeah, I actually didn't. Excuse me. I forgot about that one too.
Wait, that was the helmet.
That's the helmet right
that's
there.
the helmet right there.
The bell that they
keep having all
they
these.
didn't
really?
highlight it.
I did not get that at all.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I got that the first
And
time I
that-
watched the movie. I mean, when they come back to it, but
That's because that one moment when Monkey is in their old house and she looks at the paper and she sees it on a stand, and then that's when she realizes that it's a trap because then she knows that the helmet isn't there.
Now his mom's waking up. They did a really good job of making her likable really quickly.
Yeah, and I felt so sorry for him.
Yeah.
I felt sorry for her.
Or I mean, her too. But.
You just feel sorry for both of them.
And I like in this one that, like, typically in a regular movie, like, there would be, he, like, resents his mom and, you know, like, they don't have a good relationship at the start.
Mm-hmm.
And then the mom dies and he regrets things and he has to go on a quest. Like, that's the typical thing. And I like that this wasn't like that. I like that it was just, you know, like it is now, yeah.
Man, look at the fabric of her sleeves. All of that is animated. They had wires and stuff inside because she's in miniature, and so the fabric was actually too stiff. You know, it would kind of just sit out if it didn't have those wires in it, and so they had to. My mind is consistently blown.
Yeah.
Throughout this movie, just looking at how the animation.
I really like how they did her lapses of memory like really well. Just like, you know, one moment she's really bright and animated, then the next she's just like, I don't remember what we were talking about.
One thing I actually really like is that she's telling the story he was just telling, but like the real thing. Like he was just making it up because he's heard elements of the story, but you can see that he's just is enthralled with listening to the his story or her story as he is telling his own.
Really sets up the theme of stories.
Yeah.
Of the film.
Memories,
stories, family.
And also, it lets you know that it's his backstory, because we didn't know it was his backstory.
Yeah.
Right.
When he was telling it to the crowd. But this is a way of telling you that it's his backstory without saying, like,
I didn't know.
Little did you know, it was actually my backstory.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there you introduced the sisters, because in the story that he was telling, he didn't mention the sisters, but he said, my grandfather and your sisters.
I was confused again. Like, I feel like that's where this movie feels a little tiny bit. I didn't know if what the story he had told in the marketplace was his actual backstory or stuff he just made up about his dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not until later that, well, obviously the fire-breathing chicken, but oh, and here we set up the rules that he has to follow.
And monkey. And the robes.
Do they ever explain why the Moon King needed his eye?
Yeah. He didn't need his eye. He wanted to blind Kubo.
Oh, right.
I thought that was interesting because I used the term plot coupon earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So a plot MacGuffin is when there is a device, there is something, it's a plot device, but there's something, a map, a key, a whatever that everyone is trying to find. Everyone is trying to get.
Well, that moment was sad when his mother goes back into...
You just feel the weight of Kubo's life. He's like, this is my life. It's sad.
Yeah.
What was it saying?
Plot coupons?
MacGuffin. MacGuffins. Oh, so MacGuffin is when there's something that everyone is after and it changes hands several times. Plot coupons are when there's several pieces to a MacGuffin or a plot device.
It's like a shopping list. You need these items.
Yeah, so the sword unbreakable and the armor impenetrable and all those are plot coupons where he has to gather all of them. I thought that his eye was going to be one.
Yeah.
That his grandfather needed his eye for something, or both his eyes for something. We're not, and I find it very interesting that it wasn't that.
I don't love this here. Like this one feels a little bit unexplained and like it doesn't go anywhere.
Well,
his mother dreams.
I felt like it was needed because it explained his powers.
Well, it
doesn't explain anything. It just shows more and
it explains that it's hereditary. I didn't get before that his mom had magic. I mean, I know she had magic at the beginning, but that it was the same magic because we didn't see her manipulating paper at the beginning.
Yeah, it told you that even though her mind isn't all the way there, her powers are still there. That she's still actually very powerful.
Yeah, I felt it was needed to set up her powers. Okay, so here
you just say
we're starting to get into the beginning of the second part of the first stage. The call to adventure is this little thing. I think it's hard to identify in this movie actually, but it's this little thing that she says about the lanterns. Sort of. Because his adventure is actually, going on the quest.
Mm-hmm. But
he doesn't, I felt like he doesn't actually have a good
motivation. Like
a good, I'm going on a quest. He's really pushed into it.
Right. Yeah. That's why I was my question about the hero's journey, because like he doesn't have a journey. I don't see where the call to journey is exactly.
I feel like that's the only piece that's missing in this movie, though.
Well, it is a call to journey in the fact that he gets attacked.
Well, I mean, yes.
And, like, he's on the run.
Yes, but it's more he has no choice. It isn't something he can decide not to. Really.
Yeah, well, that's what the call to adventure is. They're not supposed to have a choice. They just pretend like they have a choice.
I like how here she's like your paper folding thing that you do. Like even they don't really understand his magic, but they kind of take it in stride because he's.
Well, it's not just his magic, but his skill in origami.
Yeah.
So
And the
he's going to do the lantern.
This one I also didn't really like.
I liked it as setting up the world some more.
Yeah.
I did, but it felt a little bit complicated. Like they have to bring the lantern to the grave, wait till the lantern lights, then put it on the river, and then that will make their souls, travel down the river or something.
I think that might be more of like it could be more, that's something that's more Japanese cultural.
Yeah, and then the golden cranes are also the spirits. Too.
Yeah, that one was.
Later on, they bring in.
I felt like it fit the world and continued to build the mystical pieces of the magic world stuff. Why I classify this as the call to adventure is because this is where he steps outside of his normal routine.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I didn't catch it. I only saw it when I was reading, but the reason he isn't able to talk to his father is because his father's not dead yet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Which begs the question is, what is little Hanzo?
What?
It's Kubo's idea of his dad.
Yeah. I like that scene showed that he's not like bitter about having one eye or anything. He's just
It's just his life.
Yeah, it's just his life.
Did he?
Eye.
Oh yeah.
And I love that Kubo's hair isn't all one color. Like you can see he has different colors in his hair. It's cool.
I think I read in the behind the scenes that they used real hair. It's just.
I was reading that it was like rubber. Strands of rubber.
I think it's real hair that has like some coating on it. So
yeah,
it's
with
more
rubber
formable.
coating on it.
Yeah.
All of the people in the background are actually CG.
Really?
Yeah, only the main characters and the named characters.
Yeah, that little girl looks CG.
No, she's stop motion.
Really?
Anyone that's blurry is.
Yeah, but the crowd. When you see a crowd,
the crowd in the
CG.
background.
It's
Yeah.
not.
Oh yeah, they're
animated.
moving a lot smoother. I was wondering about that.
But the beach, the ground, that is real.
Yeah.
Like I've seen the set for this, the graveyard thing, and it's like.
Tracking this must be really easy because there's no motion blur.
Oh, look at the sunset.
Like,
That's so pretty.
that's real too.
Yeah, that's a matte painting, right?
I think it might be a set actually.
Yeah, that looks like a
Like the trees might be flat or probably flat.
Kubo.
And then, okay, and here's when we're introduced to the sisters, which I love how they're done. They're so creepy.
It was interesting. I was reading about kind of the inspiration for them.
Yeah.
They're based off of the same myth, Japanese myth that No Face was based off of, which makes a lot of sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
No Face from
Spirited Away.
Yeah, I really like the look of the masks and the the porcelain doll kind of look that they have.
Yeah. And the way that they did their voice, like the actress who voiced them, did a really good job. I like how the lights go out.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear their voices.
Their voices were creepy.
You're like, oh.
I actually had like a shiver going up my spine when I watched this. It was like, oh
Like,
man.
whoa. I think I really like their capes and how like they're just like floating, but they're still like.
It's their capes and then the hats hiding their faces.
And that they're floating.
And
And then that one
two of them.
yeah.
I wish they did more with them. Like I felt like they got a strange, like they weren't in it enough for me. You know, like I wish they were in it a little bit more. Even though watching it again, they are in it quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I was expecting a different sort of thing when I saw the trailers for this film.
So we're gonna try and see if we can find where the
Call to action?
the call to adventure and the refusal of the call happen in this section of the film.
I believe it has just happened.
Refusal of the call there.
Yeah.
With their little smoke bomb chasing him.
Do you know if this?
What? You just steal my eye.
I think some of that smoke thing is CGI. I can't tell if all of it is, or if they had some elements. No, it looks all CGI.
I like how in this part, it's not just in his imagination or just affecting him. It affects everyone in the town.
Yeah.
Like it makes the
Yeah.
stakes a little bit bigger.
Though it's a little bit unclear as to what the smoke does at first.
But it's obviously destroying things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess.
And I like how they bring it back to the moon. And then
Monkey.
yeah. Mama. And the sisters are just so creepy. And then his mom.
Epicness.
shot.
Yeah. And you're like, this.
Ah, I love this moment. It was so cool.
Yeah, you're like, oh, that's what she used to be like. You're like, that's where the moon daughter was. That's what she was like.
So this would be the refusal of the call moment here.
Actually, isn't the refusal of the call in the whale when they're in the whale talking?
No,
Mm-mm.
no, because that's after this. Well, you said something in the hero's journey that made me think of like this moment right here. You like read something and I was like, oh, that's
I'll
him
see if I
flying
can
away.
find
Like
it.
it had the words.
And
Often when the call is given, the future hero must first refuse. Often he first refuses to heed it. This may be blah 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 blah. Hang on. Once the hero has committed to the quest, consciously or unconsciously, his guide and magical helper appears, which is right where we are.
He's committed to the quest unconsciously. He even went
Every
unconscious.
Every little hair had to be animated
Yeah.
individually. It hurts me inside.
And I love the look of the snow. The snow.
Yeah.
All of Monkey's hair had to be animated.
I know, monkey drives another mind blown. How do you do that? I don't know.
I think it's interesting that Monkey has a scar over one of her eyes, but it's the opposite eye of his mom.
I didn't notice that.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same scar, pretty much.
I liked and disliked Monkey. I felt out of the trio, the questing trio, or her, Beetle, and Kubo. She was the most Disney-like.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I couldn't identify why
I
she felt
felt-
Disney.
I felt like Beetle is the most Disney because he's the
Comedic relief.
Yeah.
But he doesn't. Why I felt he wasn't is he's not just comedic relief. He's.
He also.
We'll get into it when he's introduced, but he's more than that, which I thought was really good. Monkey felt a little more one-dimensional in that she
felt like the female sidekick.
she's just the mothering one. She mothers. That's what she does.
Well, she's his mentor.
Yeah.
I like how
well.
like totally deadpan she is.
You
and
might be
very dry.
Yeah.
tempted to complain about the smell
Yeah.
of the dead whale.
So is this the moment where they're in the belly of the whale?
Ha ha ha. No,
Yeah.
this is
That looks so yummy.
stage 3, supernatural aid. Right here in this scene, more often than not, this supernatural mentor will present the hero with one or more talismans or artifacts that will aid him later in his quest.
Well, technically, Monkey was. One
She
of the
is a
talismans.
talisman, and also
So
she
he's-
gives him a talisman.
Yeah, well, she makes the bracelet. Is the main talisman.
I really like the writing right here. It's really funny and like snappy.
Only 3? That's the first question.
I like how annoyed she is. She reminds me of Han Solo in some ways.
Of who?
Han Solo.
Oh, right.
Just how dry and
Yeah.
annoying.
She's actually kind of like K2SO, actually.
I like where he's like, I called you Mr. Monkey. I think that, spoiler, that I think that she's being way more dry because she's trying not to be so motherly. Like, she doesn't want him to know that
And
she's his mom, and so I think she's purposefully being not herself. Like, she's purposefully being kind of brusque.
I don't know. I have a hard time with that because she didn't strike me like his mom at all. And so
Also,
I felt like she's more like a reincarnation of his mom than actually his mom. Like, she's a different character.
Well, she feels more like his mom when she was the Moon Princess.
Yeah.
And that she's trying to force down her own feelings about leaving him.
And I like that she's very real.
This scene
Do I
was
have
good.
to do everything?
Yeah.
You know what? It's her eyes, the way she looks at him.
I thought that was an interesting callback now that I know that she's his mom. That he blew on her food at the beginning when he was feeding her.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Who here finds loud slurping annoying?
Not me.
Not me.
So I think this is actually the cross into the next stage.
Crossing the
first threshold.
threshold.
Yeah, they're kind of coming at the same time, but the 3 stages can also be like labeled the separation, and then the initiation, and then the return. So this stage is when he's crossing from
Separation into
separation, and he's going into initiation, or like the middle of the story where he's actually on his adventure. So technically, even though he's far away from home, he isn't acting like it. But here she's telling him the actual stakes and telling him to take it seriously.
Yeah, and he's beginning to accept.
And then, this is also the next one, which is conveniently called The Belly of the Whale.
That's funny.
I like that. What was it?
Here comes the talisman.
The
Yep.
talisman.
And then
It was at this moment that I realized why it was called the 2 strings. Kubo and the 2 strings. I felt like they had to name it that. Kubo and the 2 strings to, like, I don't know, it pointed my attention at that. Oh, that's going to come back later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's in the title, so it's important.
So in The Belly of the Whale represents the final separation from the hero's known world and self. By entering this stage, the person shows their willingness to undergo a metamorphosis.
Yeah, so I don't think that happens in this scene. I think it's more in the next one.
I think they did a good job of Monkey, of that she's very brusque and like she's very protective, but you can still see that she cares about him.
Yeah.
Which I think they did a really good job of that.
And then that shot with the eyelid. I've always wanted to do one of those shots.
Okay, this guy I don't like.
You don't
The
like Hanzo? Little Hanzo?
I don't like how unexplained he is. Like, he is another whole nother thing that seems to know.
He's a piece of
things that-
magic with its own mind.
Yeah, I mean, he's a magic being that doesn't make sense.
Like Olaf.
Yeah, it's like he knows things that they don't. So how did they create him? I don't know. This one didn't.
Yeah,
I mean,
guess
I like
really
him.
thought
He's
about
funny,
that before.
but it's a little too convenient that he shows up and knows exactly where to go.
I don't know. For some reason, I'm okay with it, though.
Yeah, because also the characters have no
Now I
idea
don't
where
wanna
to
know
go
why.
at this point.
Right.
They did a good job of showing that he's pointing the way.
So this is also part of crossing the first threshold. Here, that he's having to take the first steps towards actually beginning his quest. Even though he's been pushed to it, he hasn't officially started yet. I agree. Like, now that you point that out, it bothers me a little, but I didn't notice it before.
Yeah.
But it's the best bad idea we have.
Yeah.
I think in my brain I attributed it to that he's a miniature Hanzo, and so he has some of Hanzo with him in some way. But now that I know the whole story, that can't really be the case,
Right.
since Hanzo's not dead.
Well,
And Hanzo had already been on this quest,
Yeah.
or has researched.
I would have
quests.
liked it if like that was something that thing, that soldier was something his mother built, or that he had with him since the beginning, like the monkey.
Yeah.
Like that, something that it would make a little more sense. But you had seen him make it just a couple days ago.
Well, not for the first time, supposedly, but yeah, that he made it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's interesting. So the music for scenes like this, the music was composed by Dario Marinelli. He actually had to compose it before they animated the scene.
Because the 3-string thing.
Yeah, the Japanese guitar thing. It's
You know
it's
what's-
closer to a banjo. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
Look at all that animation.
Oh.
But yeah, he had to do it beforehand so that they could match Kubo's hand movements to the music,
Mm-hmm.
wow.
which I don't know how you do
How
that.
do you do that?
I know. How do you compose for a scene that
Brain
doesn't
just
exist?
died.
Well, I guess they storyboarded it.
Yeah.
Heavily.
These things you have to like only do what you can.
I like how that he was he was just having fun being a kid, and then she's just like,
Take this seriously. He
I
hasn't.
encourage you not to die. I love the very obvious lick and stick.
oh.
So has he crossed the first threshold yet?
Well, he's still kind of doing refusal of the call.
And
almost.
beetle.
Well, that's what it's kind of saying, that he's actually crossed into doing the quest, which is what this says about crossing the first threshold. The belly of the whale is when he is finally separated and finally accepts the quest. So I feel like that's what this is coming up.
Lame excuse. But this one was a good job out. He like thought of mosquitoes, and then they turned into them without him meaning to. Like, they really showed that he doesn't have control.
And that monkey's awesome.
Yeah. And scary. Monkey is scary.
I like this huge statue that they're walking past in the background.
Yeah.
It provides depth.
It kind of shows that there was something massive that happened.
Mm-hmm.
This movie really gets away with not explaining geography at all.
Yeah.
And you don't question it. You're
No.
not like, I'm so confused about where they are.
Because something interesting happens in each location. It doesn't just show a bunch of sweeping shots of a desert, a forest, a waterfall.
Yeah, they were in the forest. Now they're in.
Like they have stuff
snow.
happening
And
in each.
because they don't have a location that they're trying to reach.
Right.
Like, I feel like a lot of quest movies, they're like, we got to get to the end. Here's the map. Here's how we get there. But they don't actually have any locations they're going for.
They're just following little Hanzo.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this.
I love that moment.
I don't know. It was a little on the nose for me. I was like, you're kidding.
where they're talking about adventuring, and Monkey's like, something terrible could happen at any moment, and
Introduction of my favorite character. I like Beetle. He's awesome. Although he has a very southern, non-southern accent.
Yeah.
I like his eyes. They're really cool.
They're like
Yeah.
they're like slightly glowing, sort of.
Yeah.
there's not much to say about this scene except for it's funny and
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really like his character design too. Though I really want to know what he looks like without the helmet.
Maybe that's why I felt like he wasn't as Disney, is because a beetle is not normally a sidekick in this way.
He reminds me a lot of Kronk.
Yeah,
A little bit. But he's better. Beetle is better.
Beetle is more. He has a little bit more depth than Kronk, but he reminds me of Kronk.
I like how he's like, "You're wearing your robes." Wait.
I love this speech here.
I was cursed.
Trapped in this
Cursed state.
Cursed. You're like.
That's one of my favorite lines, and the other one is the eyelids one.
Oh,
Yeah, I
yeah.
know. I like the animating right there. Yeah. There seems to be many things he finds out just on that quest with him that in the last, 10 years he hasn't figured out already.
I'd rather have a really bad horror.
Yeah.
I like that he provides light, like he is the comedic relief.
And the detail on all this stuff.
Oh, whoa, yeah.
That's my favorite joke.
Yeah.
It's a sound or a smell,
Smell.
and Monkey's like, you must get a
A
lot
lot
of
of
flashes,
flashes.
indicating that he smells.
I like this shot where he creeps up and he's like right there.
Oh, he's so fun. I think that's why I kind of like Beetle. He represents the fun side of adventure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I like the animation of he acts like he has 2 arms, but he really has 4. Like the animation on his
Mhm.
with his 4 arms.
I also think the blocking in this scene is really good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the cinematography is very good. Also,
You're never confused about
Conflict! It's happening! Sorry.
where anyone is.
Lizzie and I have been having fun pointing out conflict to each other.
Oh.
Because a lot of films, he'll be like, I will go on your quest with you. And then they'll be like, okay. And then they just
fine.
leave. But no, here they gotta argue about it. I loved this moment. It was so fun. With the arrows.
Where he's like, I don't know what I can do, but I'll try something.
He's
He
like
looks so epic.
bonk. That is what I'd call.
And watch his second arm. I thought that was so cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
This line.
Yeah.
He's one of the more fitting into the voice and his writing.
Mm-hmm.
Like he doesn't quite fit in the Japanese world.
Mm-hmm.
But
Love that moment. It was my favorite
Do I
line.
have
eyes?
It's funny though that he tried to not have a Texas accent, but it peeks out every so often. There's a really, really twangy word, and you're like, he's drawling. Do I have eyes?
Awkward.
Okay.
I like how Beetle, when you as a person have a choice of how you're going to use your arms, you could settle for 2 different ways of doing something,
Mm-hmm.
or you have 2 layered emotions. So with his arms, he can display more than one emotion.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't notice that before.
So his bottom set of hands will be doing something different than his top set of hands.
I think
That shot.
I think that this kind of skips the belly of the whale step.
I think
It
it's
kind
kind
of-
of all combined.
It kind of was in there of now Kubo's on his quest. He's not thinking about how he doesn't want to be doing this anymore. And we've kind of moved on to the second act, which is initiation. And the first stage in the second act is the Road of Trials, which is
I
a
love this
series of
Don't
tests.
touch anything. The first thing he does. is
they
touch it.
look like the naughty father and son, which they are, and they have the
Mom said, "Don't touch it."
yeah.
So the Road of Trials is a series of tests that the person must undergo to begin the transformation. So that's kind of just like,
Often the person fails one or more of these tests.
which the tests often occur in threes.
Yeah.
So here we go. This is one of the first tests to get the first plot coupon.
What? Trying to get Beetle to stand up?
Yes, that's the test.
No.
See,
To get the sword
There
unbreakable.
he's like holding onto his legs and reaching with his other set of arms.
Yeah.
His animation is really good. And
I like that that wasn't the sword.
It makes me curious how exactly that sword got there.
yeah.
And
I think what you were saying, Annie, about like the various stages being a little mixed up in this part, I think that's common.
yeah,
Like
it's
usually
not
like the
every
call to
story-
adventure and the refusal of the call are kind of like the more like defined ones, and then the other three, the supernatural egg crossing the first threshold and the belly of the whale, can be kind of compressed. And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of what happened.
Well, it said at the beginning that Joseph Campbell, the guy who wrote it, he said that not every story has all of the 17 stages. They
Yeah.
they mix and match, and that's what makes the
This-
stories interesting.
The bones rising from the floor and rising up was really cool.
This guy was awesome. That moment where
And this
Yeah.
this animatronic is like 16 feet tall in real life. Like they actually built this giant thing.
I love this. The sword unbreakable.
It broke.
More like this.
Does it mean just the hand?
Yeah, but I was watching the behind the scenes for this. So this set, it is incredible. They, because of how big the skeleton is, they actually had to have a really big set. But those tiles of jade, each one was like layers and layers of resin. It took about 40 hours to make one tile.
Oh god.
They
Wait,
only,
all the background, the
Yeah.
green stuff.
Mhm.
Oh man.
But they only made a certain amount of it. The rest is CGI, just because it was so time consuming. To actually, all the 3D printing for the entire film took upwards of a year of solid printing, I think.
And-
is what or it might have been 2 years. I don't think
It's
so.
funny
2
to
years.
see how long it takes him to find the sword, because obviously all you need to do is look for a hero prop. Like, look for the sword that looks the best out of all of them, and then that's going to be the one.
Well,
I know the first two that she picks are like these dull gray ones.
Yeah.
That you're like, oh, those are gonna break.
Yeah.
I like it though.
Two
It's not
swords.
your average action scene though, with the needing to grab swords and break them. Like
Yeah. Oh, foot. That one was.
oh, it was like a little.
You can fly.
Yeah.
Apparently, I can.
I have a hard time believing that he never flew
Right.
in
It's
all
been
the time.
10 years at least.
I like how.
Well, maybe he never
I
had
like
a
how
chance
he's not.
to.
He's not good at it when he does it.
Yeah. And also, this looks painful. Like,
Ow.
Just eliminated several swords.
someone should have gotten stabbed. But look
Or
for the
his-
shiniest one.
His
Well, he
guitar
picked the
should
shiny
break.
one.
It's just not your average action scene here.
I like how the sword unfindable.
And he says the sword uncomfortable. Later.
I know. It's hilarious.
Well, I think something that is interesting about this movie
And here.
is
Oh,
is
sorry.
that the action scenes, they're actually not too action packed. They're like, you guys are all laughing during it because it's actually quite comedy packed.
Yeah.
And they're actually really slow when you think about them. Like, there's not much happens very quickly.
I like that one.
But if you think about that, all of this is stop motion animated, so it actually is. This is a lot to do, a lot of action.
This sequence probably took months and months in animating.
And now you know he has the sword because it's
The last
very
minute.
extremely shiny.
Pretty.
And it gets its own shot. Whoop.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the sword.
And like, how does he know? He goes, yes.
Well, because the blade went.
So he passed his first trial.
Which I think it's interesting that it makes sense that all the bones fall because they were all falling down on the floor.
I really wanted him
before.
to come out of his nose right there.
And then it goes, woo! Bonk!
And here we see that Beale does have eyelids.
interesting because the action scenes, the point isn't just to have action, and that really shows. The point is to find the sword and the emotional stakes that are part of that. It's very interesting.
This is me getting a back rub.
What is she putting on his wings?
We don't know.
Wing stuff? Wing lotion? I love that he's really, really horrible with a sword.
And he's just like
and
playing
she's
with
such a mom.
Shut down. And he's like, fine.
Dang.
I wanted to play with the sword.
I want to know where he learned such bad manners if he and his mom has such a good relationship.
Yeah.
Well, he interacted with all the other people
No,
in the village.
I didn't quite get this scene where immediately they, like, Monkey has been the leader so far, so I'm like,
See,
why?
look there, he's doing two emotions with his hands.
Yeah, but I didn't get why suddenly Monkey and Beetle have to agree. You know, it's like,
Well, because they both agree they need to go forward, but they're disagreeing on how to do it. I kind of felt this scene was heavy-handed in the whole
the two
married
parents.
couple
Yeah.
vibe.
Yeah. But I liked how, like, natural Beetle and Monkey were together. Like, she starts being nice to him, and, like, it makes sense that they like each other because they are technically married. But it doesn't feel awkward. Like, you don't feel like they're pushed together. You know what I mean?
Though I didn't know it really at first that they were both, his parents.
Yeah.
But watching it again, I'm like, how did I miss that at all?
I didn't think they were literally his parents, but I was like, I'm getting a family vibe. I'm getting like this is his new family sort of vibe.
Well, you're like, obviously Monkey and Beetle were meant to be together.
I suspected Monkey, definitely.
I think it was after that you learned Monkey is his mom that I was like, oh, Beetle's so much his dad.
But before you learn the monkey's his mom, I was kind of like, is this turning into a love story? I'm not sure I like that. It's supposed to be Kubo's story.
I kind of had that feeling too. Like, this is sort of weird. You don't see this.
Oh, beautiful shot.
But
beautiful shot.
Monkey and Beetle together had more chemistry than any of the characters in Twilight.
Oh, burn. You had to do it. So the next
oh, look at that. See, now they did
pretty.
forest, they did snow, and then they did like caves, and now they're doing like ocean and
this
water.
is total father-son scene.
Yeah.
Here. The next stage is called Meeting with the Goddess, and I'm reading this, and I don't think this one is in this at all. It's unless the goddess is his grandfather.
It's interesting that he puts his arrow on the outside.
But I don't think so.
No, I think Meeting with the Goddess is when his mom, when Monkey tells him that she's
maybe.
his mom.
So the next stage is actually the one that happens next, I think. Woman as Temptress is the name of this stage, but it's actually in this step, the hero faces those temptations, often of a physical or pleasurable nature, that may lead him or her to abandon or stray from his or her quest. In this one, it's the eyes, which is also the next trial. So they're like combining pieces of the hero's journey here.
I like this scene where Beetle and Monkey are being nice to each other, and Kubo's like, oh.
You're being weird. See, now they're hanging a lantern on it,
Yeah.
They knew that they were acting weird, and Kubo is... and Monkey is us.
Poke!
And then
that
they
made
eat
me
it
hungry for
raw.
some poke.
I don't like raw fish. Just saying. Any kind of raw
So
fish.
good.
That's
Enough
fine.
This scene
soy
definitely
sauce
gives you the
and
family
salt
vibe.
and
Well, it's
dressing.
supposed to.
I couldn't tell if it was on the nose or not.
No, Annie, that's on the helmet.
Ugh.
And they're like, yes.
Must you play with your food? Yes.
Oh, that's a very heavy-handed shot right there. And then, yeah.
It's a kids movie though.
Yeah.
You're allowed your fair share
Wait.
of heavy-handed shots.
Is this a kids movie?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say that it still is.
It's more of a family movie.
It's a family movie. I like what a lot of reviewers say, that it doesn't pander to kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't try and hide some of the heavier themes. Yeah, which I liked because it makes it feel more real and just different.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that Zootopia won Best Picture over this. Best Animated Feature.
Oh, no way. This scene is actually interesting because they're talking about being a hero in everyday things. They're talking about that in order to be a hero, you don't have to run around in shiny armor. That they're talking about the selfless part of being a hero, kind of.
And I really like.
And family, and being selfless and family and stuff. And it's funny because Beetle, who is Hanzo, asks Kubo what he was like when he wasn't adventuring, when Kubo asked his mom what his dad was like earlier.
And I like that you kind of, it fills in a little bit about what he was feeling with his mom.
Yeah.
Look at those leaves. Each one had to be animated. Gosh.
They said that sequence took, I think it said 19 months to do that whole sequence, the boat building sequence, and.
Well, this whole fight sequence here with the
Yeah.
sisters.
The whole boat
everything
sequence
with the boat took 19 months.
But it's coming up really soon. But the fight scene is like really cool for being stop motion.
I know. So this is kind of what I meant by Beetle isn't just the comic relief.
Right.
He's not just standing off to the side cracking jokes. He's part of it.
Yeah.
And I liked that he immediately assumed him as the warrior. He's the one who's going to go down there. You know, it's not about Kubo has to find all of the elements. Their group together has to do it, and he's the best one to do it at this point.
Can beetles hold their breath for a long time underwater?
I have no clue.
I like that Kubo's the one telling him the dangers down there.
Yeah.
That's like a different setup than usual. Normally it's like the kid who's like reckless and wants to go do something, and it's the parents going, no, it's dangerous.
That heavy-handed romance. Okay, so this is the second trial on the road of trials, but they're also combining it with the idea of being tempted away from your quest. And we reintroduce the sisters.
And you introduced their weapons, because before they didn't have weapons.
That was something that wasn't actually clear to me the first time, was that the storm and the sisters showing up are unrelated.
I'm not sure that they are unrelated. I think they are related.
Because now they just realized where they're at. Because they're still they're on the ice right here.
I like that this one you show that they went very clearly showed that they went two different directions.
Did they ever explain why they went two different directions?
Yeah, because
they're still looking for him.
No, because she said he's looking for the armor, and they said, okay, I'll go. We better prepare for him. And so the other sister went straight to the fortress.
Because they know where it is.
Right. Did they know that they had already found the sword?
I don't know.
And
yes.
Probably if they're following them along.
This fight is.
This whole sequence is.
Yeah,
really
this whole
cool.
sequence is really cool. It's the lighting and the wind and the rain.
Oh man.
Just like.
I actually did not like this sequence.
What?
And it's because it's stop motion animated that I got lost. I mean, all the underwater stuff I liked, but the fight scene with Monkey and the sister, I don't know, like my eyes couldn't comprehend what was happening because there wasn't enough motion blur and stuff like that would be there in another film. I think it was because it was stop motion that I got lost several times.
Very high contrast with very little motion blur is really jarring to the eyes.
Yeah, so not that I didn't like the sequence, I didn't like the way it was shot in this movie. But I do like that shot.
The eye.
The eyeball. We were watching a special feature about them. It's like how big, Max? At least
They're
like 6
about
foot.
4 or 5 feet at least.
Whoa, that's huge.
And it's this
Yeah.
big like light thing that they made that has like a reflective fabric inside, and that's what gives it that crinkly texture. And then in front of their light, there's 3 plastic lenses that are kind of molded differently, and then they rotate. So when you turn the light on, it has like this kind of like mottledy, crinkledy, reflective, glowy orb thing
refracted
going on. Yeah,
is the right word.
I can't figure out how they did that swinging.
I thought this was really interesting in her dialogue was that she's not just a bad guy. You know, we get to hear her side of Kubo's parents' story and what the sisters feel about it, which was really interesting, I thought.
Yeah. And I liked the boat is starting to fall apart, and that's how she was able to tell that Kubo was in danger.
Yeah, it was a good setup.
And the shadow. Yeah. And little Hanzo.
So Max, you were saying about the spinning. I don't know this for sure, but they could have a spinning, motion blurred.
They do.
Object.
And they had it in a different spot in the film, with little Hanzo's sword. When he swings his sword, they have one that's fake motion blurred. But there's some moments of her spinning her knives that it doesn't look like that. Like it looks like actual motion blur.
They might have added post blur in a few shots just to make it feel better, like that little exchange between Beetle and the sister that was really shaky and blurry.
I'm wondering how is he holding his breath for so long?
Yeah.
This whole sequence was just.
This one was a little bit heavy-handed right there.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, that one confused me. I didn't get that.
Beetle! Yay!
I didn't get that they told him that Monkey was his mom.
Yeah.
It wasn't until she said, "My son," and I was like, "Wait, what?" Later, but I really like how all the hits really land in the fight scenes. Like they look really powerful. They look like like all their kicks and stuff.
I find it interesting that you still don't know exactly who the Moon King is or what that is.
Right.
Like you get reference to it here. She said, still confused by how you people down here. Oh, Monkey.
That one looked painful.
Oh, it still looks painful. Ow,
Still digging in there.
I find it very interesting that you have a villain set up, but you don't really know anything, but they can still be the villain.
What was that?
That's her face. That's her mask.
Oh.
Oh, that's what
I didn't
it is.
catch that the first two
Cause
times.
she died.
I didn't either.
Wow.
I didn't know what the end of the action scene was.
It's fine. They don't really ever show death
Right.
in this movie, and sometimes it can be confusing.
the end.
Yeah.
They don't show the killing blow ever, shall I say?
Yeah.
So this is the meeting with the goddess.
Okay, so the meeting with the goddess is kind of hard to define, it seems like.
This is the point when the person experiences a love that has the power and significance of the all-powerful, all-encompassing, unconditional love that a fortunate infant may experience with his or her mother. Since she is his mother.
Yeah.
Kind of makes sense.
Oh man, this sequence.
I didn't like that the boat rebuilt itself with him just waking up.
Yeah. I found it interesting that it rebuilt itself and then he woke up. Like that was an interesting way to do it, but it did feel a little like I'm not sure that would actually work.
Right.
And she's like, Mom. She's like, my son. And this was the moment where I went, wait, what?
Yeah,
When I first watched
I
it.
kind of didn't like it because I was like, it kind of just ends right there. I wish they'd talked about it a little bit more. I mean, they,
what talked about?
they kind of do it in this scene, but
Yeah.
yeah, you're just like, you're my mom, and she's like, yep, you're my son, and then that was over. Except for, I mean, they sort of talk about it in this scene, but it feels really weird to like fade to a new scene to talk about it.
Right. Well, a lot of movies actually do that. It's
Another one of my favorite Beta lines.
See, I like this scene because this is the scene where she's actually being herself. She's different than when she was before. Like, she's softer and less. Oh, that moment. Total father son.
So what is the point of the meeting with the goddess in the grand scheme of the story? I haven't figured it out yet. Like, what is it
It's
supposed
kind
to
of like
do?
his respite halfway to the end of his goal.
He feels love. This is what he's fighting for, sort of thing.
Yeah.
at first I felt this was weird, but then it makes sense that he's playing, but she's controlling all the paper.
Beetle's
so that
eyes. Sorry. Yeah.
she's controlling all the paper. So is his power that he can control wood?
He can control anything because later he controls curtains and stuff.
Yeah.
I like how all the leaves turn into stars and the moons.
That's a cool shot right there too.
This movie does great at not piling all of the necessary information on you right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so many films do that. Little by little, it's just revealing a little bit more and a little bit more, and you get more depth into the characters. Not that they weren't deep before, but now there's even more there.
And I like that the exposition that they do is like in a story that they're telling, so it makes sense that they're having a moment of exposition here.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
not just like giving you all this information.
Beetle.
I love you, monkey. He's just doesn't quite get it there.
Makes me. I like this story of like his parents, but I also wonder about when did Hanzo fall in love with her? Because you get when
he saw her, when he stopped to look at her.
Mm-hmm. Love at first sight.
When he fell in love with her after she was trying to kill him.
Yep.
No, he was going to kill her, right? Or no.
No, she was coming.
He
to
was
kill
after
him.
the armor.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting. At this point, you don't know why the Moon King wants Kubo's eyes. You still don't know that, but that's what they open with, and you're not wondering about it. You know, I mean, you're still
I'm
curious
still wondering.
about it,
Kind of.
kind of, but it's not like, why aren't they answering this question? You know, you don't have that feeling.
This movie, for a story, they tell a lot of stories in it.
I know.
And it fits. It
Yeah, I
works.
really like it.
Well, so right here is the explanation for his eye.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Because he can't have human eyes, basically.
No, his grandfather wants him to be blind to.
I found it
humanity.
so interesting that one of the words she used was perfect.
Yeah.
Kind of the whole trio and the whole theme of family is that each one of them's kind of rough around the edges. You know, Beetle's kind of obtuse and impulsive, and Monkey's overprotective, and Kubo doesn't know what he's doing. You know, they each have this area where they're not perfect, and it's very interesting that that's what she used to describe the Moon King, the villain.
I like how he was like, "You're hurt," and then she slaps his hand away, and he's like, "Ow!"
So the next two phases are atonement with the father. In this step, the person must confront and be initiated by whatever holds the ultimate power in his or her life. In many myths and stories, this is the father or a father figure who has life and death power. This is the center point of the journey. So that's obviously his grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's actually just what happens next, is the dream of his grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
I love this moment. This is when you feel like Monkey and Beetle got like serious with each other.
But then
And then Beetle
is Beetle. And it's awesome. It's so fun.
This is the moment where I went, he's so totally Hanzo, because if, they're obviously, like, falling in love, and then if she's Kubo's mom, then I was going, but then who's Beetle? And I was like, well, duh.
Yeah.
Obviously.
I had the thought when you first meet Beetle, just because he is a beetle, and their house.
That's the instrument right there. Shamisen.
Oh.
His grandfather's look is so cool, I think. That he's like, he's all white and
colorless.
Is it just me, or does the moon emblem on his chest plate look like the Death Star?
He does kind of look like what's his face from
Tarkin.
Yeah.
Grandma.
Yeah.
He looks like
It
Tarkin.
does look like.
And sounds like Voldemort.
And Ramses.
He looks better than Tarkin did in Rogue One.
You person go.
I think that was
He
it.
looks
No.
more real.
He looks more real than the CGI Tarkin.
Oh yeah, look at it. It's a Death Star.
Yeah, it looks like the Death Star
Or an eyeball.
or something. But
This one, I'm not sure why this was in there. It looked like it just a thing to show, like, look what our animators can do.
No,
It's a dream made out of paper.
which grandfather has the same magic powers of manipulating paper. I thought it was a nice tie-in.
How did he know that was his father's fortress?
Because it had a big beetle horns on the top.
Yeah.
Oh.
And remember at the beginning when his mom was telling the story,
Oh.
and
okay.
it ends at a fortress, and that's where she forgets. Where she kind of trails off.
I thought it was interesting that in his grandfather's dialogue, he said, I am blind in both eyes, but that means I see double as much. Where
They have like all sorts of wordplay with
yeah,
him.
but like his grandfather was saying,
Oh, this whole parent moment here.
Yeah. but his grandfather was basically saying that by becoming blind,
It's sort of uncomfortable.
But his grandfather was like suggesting that because he was blind, he like ascended to a higher level. So like his grandfather was trying to suggest to Kubo that giving up his other eye would be a good thing, which is kind of creepy.
I like the motif that just happened. Well, not motif, but little thing. He put little Hanzo away
Yeah.
as he's deviating from the actual journey that little Hanzo would take him on.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps. I mean,
And-
we never really know, but
And
because he
Hanzo,
puts him away.
little Hanzo was pointing in a different direction, wasn't he?
I didn't see.
I
Maybe
didn't
so.
see, or something.
And now we're in green summery bamboo.
Yeah, all the diverse locations, like they all look very different.
It was interesting. That's what they said was so difficult about trying to do an epic quest story in stop motion is because they were constantly moving. They had to keep creating sets. And that was part of the most expensive, most time-consuming part of it.
Snow.
So what's the next checkpoint here?
Well, Atonement with the Father is technically next.
No, we just did that.
No, they haven't done it yet. He hasn't confronted him.
Oh.
So
Oh, okay.
Apostasis is the next one after that, but I think they're not going to be in order. When someone dies of physical death or dies to the self to live in spirit, he or she moves beyond the pairs. I think it's pairs of opposites. Don't know what that means. To a state of divine knowledge,
I think
love,
I'm
compassion,
reading
and bliss.
something different.
Yeah,
This is the point of
I'm looking at a
realization.
flow chart, which is a little bit easier to.
Yeah. This is the point of realization in which a greater understanding is achieved. Armed with this new knowledge and perception, the hero is resolved and ready for the more difficult part of the adventure.
Yeah,
So that kind of happens right at the end in this one, though.
But
In this one,
he
they're-
realizes where the helmet is?
Yeah, so they're about to find. The end of one story is merely the beginning of another. Oh, that's funny. But they're about to figure out like the last pieces of the puzzle, and simultaneously his parents get killed. Spoiler. And
And so this is the atonement with the father, basically.
yeah, and apostasis because his parents die. So it's when someone dies.
And he comes to the realization of what he needs to do.
Yeah.
Interesting. So Did anybody else think that was like wanting to scream at Kubo that he was stupid for not figuring out that was his grandfather in his dream, and he's obviously leading you astray?
Yeah.
I think I think this is where it's a little bit
two and two together here.
Yeah, I think that's where it feels.
Some
a
of
little
the
bit like
trivia pointed out that painting that just opened on the door had the split between Kubo and his parents.
Huh.
And that's like a metaphor for what's about to happen.
Interesting. It's really interesting that I was listening to interviews. What they wanted to focus on, the director especially loved Japanese culture and was really excited to have it be a part of this film. What he was saying is that something that's very important to the Japanese culture is paying attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is something that they did, and just little things like that where you wonder, did they think of that, or did somebody realize that later? They probably thought of it in this case.
Or like this one where the helmet is painted on the door, so you're like, oh, the helmet's behind the door, and then
Monkey.
it's like, no, it's just the courtyard. And then Beetle hangs a lantern.
Okay, I missed the before where. Okay, I can kind of see it there hanging. I didn't get enough of a glimpse beforehand to realize what that was.
Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing this is where the other sister went when they went in opposite directions in the other scene.
Or is this atonement with father? Is his grandfather here?
No, it's his aunt.
Oh. Yeah. So we kind of.
So that doesn't come till later.
Interesting. So they're out of order, which is what you do because technically he's still on his road of trials, sort of.
Except for we're having someone dies and we're coming to realize like all of the last bits of information.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that the reveal of Beetle being, his father was a little bit different than this.
Yeah, this
like,
one
they
felt
were just
a little
being
flat.
told.
That's what I felt from about here on out. A lot of the story kind of falls flat for me, which I was trying to figure out why.
That's something Rachel and I were talking about last night, was that this, I feel like, really should have been the climax of the movie. Or at least, right, like, when Beetle dies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the grandfather is the one that kills Beetle instead of the sister. Like that, and then it goes into that scene right here. Like, obviously there are some issues, like why would the helmet be here and stuff, but it's like this feels like a much better climax of the movie than the actual one that they had.
Yeah,
I remember when I watched it first, it's like this after this, I don't like the movie anymore. Like, I don't like anything that happens after this scene and sequence.
Huh.
I love how her mask is broken.
Yeah.
It's so creepy.
Monkey.
I like her blades.
I like how they make the sisters different. They have different weapons, and the other one didn't have a pipe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No,
and Monkey is always shown with a sword, just one sword. Like, even when she, in the story she was telling, she only had one sword. Kind of. So I think that was like her weapon, I guess.
Yeah, like all of that motion blur. See there, Max?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of this is added. A lot of the camera shake is added.
I don't know, Max. I don't really agree with you on that one.
On what?
When I got to this point in the movie, just watching it the first time, I was like, I didn't feel ready for the climax fight.
Well, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's like, this is more emotional, though. There's more emotion and stuff in here, and I don't like that his father just randomly dies right here.
A samurai.
It was so sad and sweet.
And then
It's so sad.
Man,
also,
I'm reading. Sorry, go ahead.
I really like all the voice acting.
Mm.
Like, all of it. His mother, and then Charlize Theron, and I don't know, it's just really good.
I was surprised when Beetle died.
No, I wasn't.
I-
I was just waiting for it. I was like,
Yeah, and I wanted them to be together for a little bit longer.
I didn't. It was a little awkward and weird. I like it.
it took the conflict away.
On some level, it wasn't weird.
I didn't like this
another
strange
level.
slow mo
Yeah,
here. It's
slow
kind
mo
of
and
out of
stop
character.
motion isn't super successful.
And it's confusing exactly what happened.
Again, because they didn't show the death blow.
Yeah, they never show any death.
Well, they
which
showed
sometimes
beetles.
You never see them.
Oh.
See it actually sticking through him.
Because so they show the mask to say that she's dead.
And then they showed that.
They showed little Hanzo, and then they show his bow, and
Broken
then the
bow,
monkey.
and then
And the broken monkey.
Oh.
You get what happened, but you're still like, I wanted to know how it
I
happened.
think that Tira was not stop motion. I think they just dripped it down the.
Then how did they do the animating of the mouth and stuff?
It doesn't animate once the tear stops, or
Oh.
once the tear goes down. The face stops moving once the tear comes out.
I'm glad that they had this 2 strings break here.
Uh-huh.
And not, because it would have been really weird if all the strings broke at once. In the way that they're doing it. Oh, okay. I didn't get that before. I couldn't tell what that was a picture of. Yeah. But I'm not sure you were supposed to get it until he gets back to the village.
Yeah.
Kubo and the 2 strings. Roll credits.
That does not look like it was long enough to go for his whole instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah, but see, I like this part where you're like, oh,
Kubo.
grandfather, watch out, Kubo's mad.
I wanted him to use his powers a little bit more in the final battle, too.
I thought that was the point,
His
though.
guitar was broken. At the end, he did.
I
when
think
he
that was
fixed
the
it.
point. Is that he thought that the armor and stuff was
true.
supposed
Yeah,
to
no,
be
that
help
makes
him
sense.
defeat, and it wasn't really.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of the reason why the movie falls apart is because now we're not quite sure what his quest is anymore. Like up until now, his quest has been to find the armor
And hide from his grandfather.
Yeah.
and so now both of those things are done.
That's why I feel like either his grandfather should have killed Beetle, or the sister. The sister should be more of the villain of the story rather than the grandfather.
Like she should be chasing him or something. At this point,
I'm not sure exactly.
but he knows where the helmet is, and so he has to put it on and then turn
No,
around and
it's like-
fight. I don't know.
In order, like, this is where he feels he's like getting ready for the final confrontation. If, like you said, his grandfather had been the one to kill Beetle, if Kubo had the motivation to, to be like, I'm gonna get you, and like they show that Kubo is now going after his grandfather instead of him just waiting for his grandfather to show up. I don't know.
It's interesting looking ahead at the stages of the hero's journey. From here on out, it's kind of like pick one of these as an ending. So I'm trying to. I think we still haven't hit. Okay, here is the atonement of the father. Really, he confronts the person who has power, life and death power over him. But it's also kind of mixed with the ultimate boon, which is the achievement of the goal of the quest. It's what the person went on the journey to get, which is kind of the helmet. Well, the completion of the armor. He gathered all of the
he's
plot
completed
coupons.
his plot coupon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
like that line. I should have listened to my parents because I'm like, yay, listen to your parents. I like that this movie is an anti-adult parents. That's what I really like about this movie. Like, so what I feel like messes up with the ending is that in this scene, Kubo is definitely against his grandfather. He wants to defeat his grandfather. He says, "I'm gonna kill you," but then later he saves his grandfather.
Yeah. Oh, I hate that ending with what they do with his grandfather at the end. I really dislike that for some reason.
It's because I like. It's funny because like, we've been saying we don't really like the ending from when his parents die on.
Yeah.
But I think I like looking at the hero's journey. Like, it's helping me understand why I don't like it. Is because we lost the goal. Like, this isn't part of his goal.
No, his goal was to get the stuff. So now that he has it, he's not.
We just didn't know what would happen when he got it. The goal. It's what they said at the beginning was whoever found all the pieces of armor would defeat the Moon King. That's all we know. But we don't know how.
Yeah, we don't know why we need to defeat the Moon King.
Well, besides that, he wants to steal Kubo's eye. But
well, right at the beginning when when he first meets the sisters at night, his mom. Well, when his mom comes to save him, his mom said something like, "Now they'll never stop chasing you. Now that they know where you are," kind of. Because he was out for one night. So I wonder if it's like, if that's just something that we forgot. Like he has to defeat them or they'll be chasing him the rest of his life, But they kind of lost that. Maybe.
Yeah. We're still not like 100%. Like, they're talking about why they're chasing him, but it sounds like it's just because the Moon King doesn't want another
betrayed child
person. I don't know why. And as like a half moon child and half human, he has to give up his eyes to become part of the Moon Kingdom. It sounds like that's kind of what they're implying. But you don't really understand why he's a threat to the Moon King
because he got all the armor.
Well, yeah, but you don't understand. I don't understand why the person who has all the armor would be a threat.
Like
I don't. It's more of a prophecy sort of thing. The person who gets the armor will defeat the Moon King.
Oh, I see.
Not that because they have the armor, as it shows, he doesn't end up using the armor to defeat the Moon King.
I like how they keep coming back to the moon in this fight scene. The Moon King. They keep referencing the moon in this whole sequence, which I think is really cool.
I wish there was a moment that was like when he threw the rock, like it would go through Grandfather, but then when he touches the sword, the sword doesn't. But that might be a little bit too Lord of the Ringsy. It's so Ray Fiennes. He's so
Ramses.
Voldemort Ramses right here.
Yeah.
And conveniently gets thrown into a graveyard.
With the sword there.
I liked this final fight. I mean, I get what you're saying about it's not as emotional as the other one.
Like, him being epic is without his instrument is not, like, he's not that good with a sword. Like, it doesn't match up. Like, how he is acting here just doesn't match up to me.
I feel like it would if kind of what Rachel's saying, we knew what he was fighting for.
Yes,
so like if we had a reiteration of, okay, I lost my family twice now, what is he fighting for? There's no way that little Kubo here, who's not good with a sword, can defeat his grandfather. That's kind of the feeling that you get. So you don't know why he's fighting. You don't know what's, spurring him on, even though he's probably doomed to fail. And so, although this moment is really good, it fits with all the themes of the story, family, storytelling, the magic of the music, and the whole thing with his eyes being able to look into another soul, have compassion, and stuff like that. It's all completely goes with the theme so far, but it falls flat because you didn't feel like Kubo was missing that. Not to mention, they're just sitting here talking about it.
Yeah, I was like,
if Kubo was missing it, you would get it from what is happening, and he wouldn't have to say it.
Yeah.
I wished that they had gone into like a magic battle from here, not him just standing there talking and just strumming sometimes.
That's a cool shot, though.
Yeah.
But I really don't like when he puts up the shield bubble here. It looks like something you would see in Tron. If you look at it.
Oh, I recognize this one. It's one of the part of the Act 3 part of the hero's journey. The rescue from without. Just as a hero may need guides and assistants to set out on the quest, often he or she must have powerful guides and rescuers to bring them back to everyday life.
Especially if the person has been wounded or weakened by the experience.
So he has no family now.
Look at that.
This is his family.
That shield
sort of
bubble.
thing.
That's so Tron.
I don't like that all the townspeople come.
Yeah. Why are they all at the graveyard?
Yeah, I'm more like...
Well, their town was destroyed, and that's where their ancestors are. So.
Oh, right.
Again, we don't see exactly what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like that or not. I mean, I get it, but...
And then he's still blind.
I thought it was really interesting that he's blind in the opposite eye of Kubo.
Yeah.
Like, you totally feel like that's Kubo's other eye right there.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking, like, they didn't really explain it, but I wonder if that is, like, supposed to be Kubo's eye. You know, because he had it somewhere.
Is the eye, or is it like Kubo's eye? Is the one he has like the same as Kubo's?
I think it is. It's brown.
No, it's a little bit darker brown than Kubo's.
Yeah, see, this part, it's like, and the villagers are the ones that tell his grandfather how kind he is. Like, if it was Kubo, that would have been better, because Kubo made the choice of, you are my family now.
Mm-hmm.
And this seems selfish almost, what the townspeople are doing.
Yeah.
Why?
What they're telling is stuff that
would benefit them.
Yeah, in a way.
Oh, I didn't think that's what it was meant.
I don't know. It just struck me as off. Like there was something about it that I just didn't like.
Well, I felt they were trying to fit it in with the whole theme of you are made up of your story, and so they're giving him a new story basically.
But they're not. They're just telling him what things he did, not like
the story of his life.
I kind of felt like what felt a little wrong to me was it felt like all of the townspeople had the secret communication that we weren't in on about what they were going to do.
Know what the heck is happening?
Like, I didn't even know that after he was a monster, he was going to turn into a human that had one eye. You know, like, I didn't even know that would happen. So how did the townspeople plan for it and then start yeah.
So we kind of skipped some of the steps, or like some of the steps of the hero's journey are kind of smushed together.
Check marks.
So somewhere in here, there's supposed to be we're getting out of the last stage, and he's returning home. So sometimes you'll have like a refusal of the return, like they don't want to go home. But in this case, Kubo actually, like, the end was at his home, so they kind of skipped that one. And then crossing the return threshold, retaining the wisdom gained on the quest, integrating that wisdom into a human life, and possibly sharing the wisdom with the rest of the world.
I feel like that's not that one specifically, but this whole scene is the transition of this is what he's learned, and what he really wanted was his family, and he didn't end up with that.
Yeah. And then there's Master of Two Worlds, achieving a balance between the material and the spiritual, inner and outer worlds. I feel like that's kind of what this is.
Where he's bit.
Like looking for that.
Without all the mumbo jumbo.
Yeah. And then freedom to live. Mastery leads to freedom from fear of death, which in turn is freedom to live. This is sometimes referred to as living in the moment, neither anticipating the future nor regretting the past.
I don't know. That's the one thing I felt again that fell flat about the ending. You're not sure what Kubo does from here. You know, it's missing that return moment of this is what he decided to do with his life without his parents.
I'm not sure about this ending shot here.
Yeah.
Going straight into the camera.
Like, this should have been, goodbye, Mom and Dad. I'm going to do something with my life.
Unless there was more... unless there's more of him, like, talking to the audience.
I did like that, where they put the little voiceover at the end. Just because the whole storyteller.
But I wish there was a little bit more of that if they were gonna look down the camera like they did. Like I just wanted a little bit more like narration to deserve that. I don't know.
Maybe the narration needed to call back to the beginning. So the whole beginning setup was that he loved to tell stories, but he never ended them.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's what they were trying to say. This is the end of his story. You don't need to know more. But again, the point was that stories live on. And so the end of one story is just the beginning of another. That sort of thing. And so I felt like it actually betrayed its own theme by not having and this is what Kubo did with his life. You know, did he just live in the village and tell stories? Did he do something?
Well, they made it out that he found, like, he lost his parents, but he also gained his grandfather. Of that,
I suppose
he now has a new life with his grandfather.
I actually kind of wish his grandfather was there in the ending shot, because it would have shown that he has something now, you know.
Yeah,
still.
or he sees his mom and dad floating down the river, turns around and walks towards his grandfather.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Leaving one life behind, moving on to the next.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this movie was, the guy wrote it, and then they said, can you cut down the beginning? The beginning is too long. And so he did, like, the writers did a really good job of jam-packing the beginning with so much information so well. Because, like, the beginning is really good at giving you all the information that you need without feeling like they're cramming it down your throat.
I feel like...
But then the ending... It's like the ending loses... I don't know, complexity? Like, compared to the beginning, the ending feels very simple and one-dimensional. Whereas the beginning is, like, telling you 3 different things in one scene. Which I think is interesting.
Seems like the third act of the hero's journey is kind of just a pick and choose from this buffet of ideas. And he didn't really end up on any of them. You know, we're missing the whole return part, where we didn't feel like, he returned to life. We don't know. We don't know.
And that's what makes it feel, like, slightly unsatisfying.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I really like this end credits thing where they show off the skeleton set.
Yeah.
They're showing them building the skeleton set as part of the end credits in stop motion.
Yeah, see there they had storyboards.
Complex animatics. And...
I like how he's wearing like half samurai armor, but it's destroyed.
Yeah.
That was cool. There's just so many unique ideas, and even though the ending falls a little flat, it's still not bad, you know.
Yeah.
It's still a really good movie, and so refreshing. That's just the word I want to use.
It's interesting because this is like the director and all the writers. This is like their first 1 or 2 movies. Like some of them have worked on Paranorman before this, but other than that, it's almost everyone's first, big feature.
It's very
and
interesting.
It's just like, it's so good.
I think it's interesting that you say that you said that Monkey feels kind of Disney-ish, but none of the themes in this movie are Disney.
It's more like they are the same themes as Disney, but this goes so much deeper, and they didn't rely on tropes, and they didn't rely on... I felt like the hero's journey is a structure to start with, basically. This gives you an idea of where you want to go with a story. And I felt like they took it and gave it purpose, gave it reasons, whereas a lot of Disney films just kind of like, and then we're hitting this checkpoint, and then we're hitting this checkpoint, and there's not
now a song.
Yeah. Whereas this, you felt there was a purpose for everything that happened, and it just connects so much better. So even though it's the same themes, family, stories, it's a better version of it.
Mm-hmm. But my favorite point of this movie is actually in the ending with the two lanterns, where he's like, I really wish you were here because I still need you. Like, I really liked that moment because he's still a kid that, like, even after the adventure, he's not like a grown man now. I really liked that.
Yeah, I like that moment too. But one thing that I noticed that I wanted to see was the two lanterns light up.
Yeah.
And they didn't show that. All they showed was that shot of all the lanterns taking off as birds, and then the two spirits like standing beside him. Where like Annie was saying, I wish I saw them like walk off into the water, turn into lanterns, and like float down the river. But also right before that, you see them light up, and then him turn and walk and put them into the water or something.
Yeah.
Saying goodbye sort of thing.
Yeah, so some way, maybe not have those two ideas together, but some way of saying goodbye.
Yeah.
Because that's what the whole kind of ritual was at the start, and then it's like to visit and talk later on.
I wonder why they didn't come back around. Like, it's like they just didn't get quite all the way back on track. Like, and it's not a long movie,
Mm-hmm.
They could have put a little bit more on.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they just didn't feel they needed. And obviously, I find it mind blowing that the script was totally written locked, and then they were filming for 2 years. That's how long stop motion takes.
Mm-hmm.
However many people. Do you know how many animators they had?
Well, I think they're Leica. I was reading in some of the trivia, and I think it's like a 400 person.
But not all of those are animators.
No, but they're just like the team that makes the movie.
Yeah, I watched a short thing on, I think it was probably, no, actually it was for Kubo. It was like a featurette sort of thing on YouTube about how it's kind of the reverse of what you think of a normal set, where like everyone comes and set up set, and then there's like all these people and they're moving the camera and stuff, where it's actually all these people come build the set, set it up, maybe takes a week or whatever, I don't know how long, but sets up the camera, sets all this stuff. The animator goes into a private room with the director and talks about what he wants from the shot and all that stuff, and then everyone leaves and the animator sits in the dark, in the quiet, animating everything, including the camera sometimes, or like two people or whatever sitting there just, and he's like, so it was from it was an animator telling this story of how he likes to work, maybe even, but it's like, yeah, he just puts on headphones and music, and then,
but like one person takes a character.
Yeah. Well, he was doing the shot where Kubo walks into the graveyard for the first time at the beginning of the movie, so that was like their example.
One person takes a sequence at least.
Yeah, so maybe when there's multiple characters, they have a little bit bigger crew, but it is kind of like everyone sets up the shot and then they leave it to the animator and like step out for days.
So you got to think, if they have like 30 or 40 animators, that's 30 or 40 people working 8 hours a day for 2 years.
Yep. And it's probably more like 12 hours a day.
I thought they said they only had two like main animators. There was only two of them.
Maybe so.
If I remember correctly.
That's insane. I could not do that.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
So that was an interesting experiment in talking about the hero's journey.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to see. Like, it's just kind of a, hey, try this, and this will fit here, and like, kind of, the further you get into the formula, the less like structured it is.
Yeah.
It's like, pick one of these and mash them all together, however it makes sense.
Yeah, but they still end up kind of, most of them all in there, and in most stories. The favorite one to analyze in that way is Star Wars.
Yes.
And Luke's story.
Because that was the first one that really like George Lucas said, "Okay, here's the hero's journey. I'm going to follow this to the letter, basically." Because that's the one you can draw the most, the clearest.
Mm-hmm.
Here's all the beats.
Yeah.
So, final thoughts on the film, Max?
I really like it. I don't love the ending because, I mean, I don't like how it leaves you. It feels like it breaks what it set up a little bit, but I don't know. Going back and watching it again was just fun because I want to make something like this. You know, this feels like something I would want to make.
Minus the stop motion.
Minus the stop motion.
I can't imagine you doing stop motion.
Oh, heck no. I can barely do rotoscoping. And this just like, it gives me cold sweats just trying to think about.
The amount of detail.
Yeah. But I know, I just really liked it. It was such a fun adventure movie.
Yeah. And, like, I really like how it looks. Like, all the different locations. Each of the locations are different. The lighting is amazing. It's just, like, it looks really good. And the story's cool. And I really like the character dynamics of it. Like, it's a really solid film. It just falls slightly short at the end.
But, I mean, the dialogue, even with that ending, the dialogue never goes into the tropey kind of dialogue you see in a lot of movies nowadays.
I felt there were a couple times where it was starting to edge into it, but yeah, you're right.
But like the relationships weren't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't a lot of, I don't know what you would use. I think of it as juvenile ways characters relate in a lot of movies.
They think because, or if animated movies, it's for kids, that they have to act like kids.
Yeah.
For kids to get it.
Right.
No. I liked, like, something we were talking about just after seeing the movie for the first time was how simple it is. You know, it's actually kind of a simple story.
Very small.
Yeah, and I really like movies that are well done and simple because it kind of gives you this. It's like chicken soup, you know. It's like it gives a wholesome, completed feeling. Even though the end left a little bit to be desired, you know, you still have that feeling after watching it that this was really well done. I was able to like get into that world and be there and have a fun time, have emotions with the characters, and then at the end of the movie you feel like that was fun.
Yeah, it's like in a time where, like, with all the comic book movies we have now, where everyone, there's some, you know, humanity ending disaster coming that they have to prevent.
Yeah.
This one was just a small. It was all about just him.
Yeah,
like,
it was
a big world.
Yeah, the biggest it was the village.
World machine gonna destroy everything.
It was that all the stakes were personal.
Yeah.
So my final thoughts on the movie were, I liked it. I agree it felt really small, and that felt refreshing. As Annie was saying, that kind of the whole movie feels refreshing. There was a lot of little things that I didn't quite like the ending, and for me, Monkey's character, the Disney-ish feel that you guys are talking about, kind of turned me away from her character. Like, I was just kind of like, I don't know. I couldn't ever. Maybe it was just I couldn't nail down what she was, and so I never felt like I got to know her very well. But other than that, it was like really tight beginning, and a really small story, and like you were saying with the geography, that you didn't care about how big the world was, where they were in the world.
Oh yeah, like at the end, he just comes back to the village. You know.
Yeah.
He learns where the helmet is, and he just like did it take him a long time? You know, you don't question.
Well,
any
no,
of
it did because he left in the morning and he got there at night.
Yeah.
That's not a long time.
Well, it wasn't like boom, he was there. It took some time.
Did he make his wings fly that whole time?
Yeah, so it was just like little stuff. Well, not little stuff, like stuff that you just didn't question and you didn't need to for the story to make sense. Where I know that for us coming up with our own stories, we come across all of these problems that we're like, oh, but we have to
have an answer for that.
Yeah, we have to have an answer for that. And it's really nice to see that. I mean, in certain circumstances you do, but it's really fun to see a way that you don't need to have an answer for any of that. And it's actually really inspiring for story creation.
Yeah. I think that if you're looking at stories and how to make a small, like a smaller, more compact
I think that's a better way of
script.
saying it. It's not a small story, it's a compact story.
Yeah.
But the stakes are small for the world.
Yeah.
It's not small for him.
Well, they aren't small because they're personal. It doesn't make the stakes any smaller. It just makes the world and it makes the consequences less
world ending.
Apocalyptic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're any less small or real.
Right.
Yeah, I found it very interesting. The mix of the hero's journey is very much like a Western culture standard. And then to infuse it with all of this Japanese stuff, the Eastern culture, it was very interesting. And it's just kind of like turn your head sideways, come into a different world for a little while. It's interesting. I really enjoyed it.
Yep.
I really liked all the details, of course, and like all the art design, and like everything looked like it was made out of, like all the costumes. Their costumes looked real, and
everything had a
substance.
lot of texture.
Yeah, and like especially the armor that the plot coupons, like the armor looks really good, even though it's like, I don't know, a foot big.
Probably less than that. I
that?
think that the Kubo version that they used the most was about 9 inches.
Yeah, the
so
armor.
It's less than a foot.
The armor is like at most 3 inches tall,
Yikes.
so like 2 inches.
Yeah, it looked really good for being
tiny compared.
Yeah, but I think this is a very good film to analyze and to draw inspiration from, just because it's so compact and well done.
Did you
But
see
epic.
in the special features that it was shot on a Canon 5D?
Really?
Yeah,
that's what they took always.
Because they were just taking pictures.
Right. Huh. I didn't know they used that. Something I felt about it, that the stop motion was so good that there were times when I wish it was just fully animated. Like, especially the fight scenes and some of those action sequences. Like, I wanted them to be able to go a little bit farther into realism, but they couldn't. Like, this, I don't know how they can get any more than this in stop motion. Like, yeah, they can do different things, but I don't know how they can surpass something like this, technology-wise. I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see what they do next.
So, this has been the Earflaps podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Signing off here is Annie.
And Rachel.
And Lizzie.
And Max.
And over in the corner, our tech support.
I'm Joe.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Talk to you next time. We'll talk at you next time.